What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Fire Medic Adventures, number 17. It's Matt, that firefighter medic guy. Yes, I am that guy, back to tell you another story. This is a good one. Last time I did this on Monday, I talked about one of my greatest mentors of all time, my fire captain. And so today is a story about me. I wanted to share this all with you. I don't talk about this very often. And again, a lot of people really like the stories. You know, overwhelming positive feedback on the firefighter stories. And like I said, I got thousands I can share with you over the course of many years. And so thanks again for sharing a little of your time with me and to watch my videos. Again, greatly appreciated. We're kind of forming a little family here with this channel. I love it. So today, story time. You might see Maverick walking around too, and there he is. He come in to check out, see what's going on. He must have been satisfied with the work we're doing. He's going back to take a nap, I think. So today, I got a good one for you all. This is a story about one of my very first rescues that I made when I was brand spanking new as a paid firefighter. So this call came in early in the morning. It was somewhere between 2:30 and 3 a.m., I think it was. And it was for a motor vehicle crash with possible entrapment and a possible ejection. And then dispatch also notified us that this was a single car crash. And there was the possibility of power lines being down. Power lines, anytime you involve power lines in any type of emergency call, it raises the level of danger. It raises the level of risk. It raises everything up exponentially. One slight mistake, one little wrong encounter with a power line, and that's going to be about it. Power lines are unforgiving, and you have got to be unbelievably careful when working around power lines that are down and they're live. I can't even begin to stress how dangerous this situation is when you got power lines down. So the call comes in. Since I'm new, I'm assigned to the ambulance. It was Medical 11 at the time. And so I got on to Medical 11 with firefighter, we'll call him John. I got on Medical 11 with firefighter EMT John. And at the time, too, I was an EMT. I was not a paramedic yet. I was just getting ready to start school the following January in 2007. So myself and firefighter EMT John got in Medical 11, and we headed out. And then Captain Hickman and the engineer and a couple other guys loaded up in a Rescue 1, and we responded to the call. That was our typical response for a car accident, was one ambulance and then Rescue 1, which was our heavy rescue. So Medical 11 and Rescue 1 head out of the station. We're in the lead, and we're heading towards an address of County Road 225 North near Ravinia Loop in Monticello, Indiana. And I got a little picture. I took a screenshot from Google Maps of kind of where this was to my best memory. It's hard to believe it's been almost 20 years ago. I can't believe time's gone by that fast. So I'll put that up over here. This is kind of where we were heading to. And then I'll also do a street view so you can see there's nothing around here. It's just cornfields or soybean fields. Whenever this picture was taken, it looks like there were soybeans there, and then you can also see a few corn stalks in there. Basically, that's how it works in farming is with your fields, you alternate them. One year it's soybeans, the next year it's corn, and just keeps going back and forth. So at the time, this, like I said, this is October 1st, so we're in the fall now. The corn, as we would say in Indiana, is still up, meaning they haven't harvested the corn yet. The farmers hadn't gone through with the combines and cut all the corn stalks down and harvested all the grain. So as we would say, the corn was still up. It's not down. That's how we call it. Corn's up or corn's down. So the corn was still up. Also, radio traffic on our radios that dispatch comes back and says, hey, just be advised, we're receiving multiple calls on this. Now, anytime dispatch says we're receiving multiple calls, you know you're going to something. You know, that means that a lot of people are seeing this and a lot of people are concerned. And so that there's definitely something to this. And then we're getting more and more info as we're going out there. They said, lines were down. The power lines were down. The power lines were still live. So the Captain Hickman of Rescue 1 put a call out right away to NIPSCO, who is in Indiana. It's the Northern Indiana Public Service Company. He put a call out to them because you also have to know where you're going. You got to know, because some of the areas you're going to are different power companies. So we have it labeled in our map books and everything of what power company responds to what area. So this area was a NIPSCO area. So he gets a hold of dispatch and says, hey, I need you to contact NIPSCO. We're going to need a utility truck out there ASAP. So they take care of that. And then dispatch said, people are saying that there's multiple victims in this. And again, single car accident. Usually at this time in the morning like that, especially early morning, this was what was it? It was a Saturday night into Sunday morning. You also have to think about, is alcohol involved? And in this case, it was, sadly. This was a very high-speed collision. So we get there, and of course, police department vehicles are everywhere. You can see the lines down. And I drew up some pictures here. These are very crude pictures. They're like stick figure levels, but it gets the point across of how we did this. So we arrive on scene, and I still remember like it was yesterday. There was what was left of a Ford Mustang, and you could see it out into the cornfield, meaning it had hit the ground so hard and rolled, I can't tell you how many times, that it looked like a balled up piece of paper. You could see it sitting out in the cornfield because it knocked the corn down as it went into the field. And then you could see the power lines down, and the report was that one person had possibly been ejected from this wreck, that the other three were still in the car. So we get parked, and again, you got to get parked far away because you got lines down, and it's dark out. So till we get the scene lit up with the generators and all the exterior lighting, we're not sure what we're dealing with here. So we get the scene lit up, and you can see the power lines down, and they're maybe 8 feet, 7-8 feet above the ground. That's low. That's really low. So this picture shows kind of what this looked like. So like I said, this is artwork right here. So you have to imagine this area right here. This would be the road or the horizon level. And then obviously the power poles on this side. You can see how right here I drew this with the wires missing. What happened is the car, that white Mustang, was traveling at such a high rate of speed that at some point it had left the ground. It hit something and went airborne. When they went airborne, they hit this telephone pole right here, went straight through the middle of that telephone pole. And then the car at some point hit the ground and rolled. So when the car hit the middle of this telephone pole, it knocked out the center of the pole and dropped the wires down. So the middle part was completely gone. The bottom half of the pole was still there, and this upper half was still there. But the middle was completely gone. And so now you got the weight of this thing with no support, drug those power lines way, way down, almost to the ground. They think that when that car hit this telephone pole, it slowed it down enough, but it was still at an immense rate of speed that when it hit this telephone pole, it threw one of the passengers out. And they think it was the driver's side passenger, went out through the windshield. And that kicked him out over in, where am I at? Oh, so the car's, I got to think, car's traveling this way. It's opposite. So the car's traveling this way, takes out the center of the telephone pole, ejects the front passenger out onto the ground, and then the car basically hit the corn and then tumbled until it came to a stop. The victim was actually laying here directly underneath these power lines. Now, at the time, we didn't know he was there. So we get out of the rescue. We put the lines in our sight where you could see him. And I'm going to put this down a minute. So we're looking to see if we can see this guy. And all of a sudden, you could hear him breathing, okay? And then there was some moans and groans coming out of him. little graphic here, but just bear with me. In the medical sciences of how things work, when there's major head trauma, the jaw clenches down and the body's breathing changes to almost like a snoring respiration. In fire rescue and EMS and even in the hospital, they call it the death rattle because it means that this person doesn't have long to live unless you do something about it soon. And so it sounds kind of like like that. It's not pleasant. And we could hear that, and then you could hear him groaning. And so we get the lights out. We're trying to say, where is this coming from? And we're trying to be mindful of the power lines. Well, you could see him, and the light, lit him up, and there he was. The guy was directly underneath these freaking power lines. Like I said, they're not on the ground, but they were sure as hell close to the ground, and they're still... There's nothing holding them up. This top piece right here is still attached with the wood and everything is dragging these lines down. So the guy's underneath there, and we immediately got on the radio to the captain of Rescue 1 and said, hey, we found the guy. He's underneath the power lines. And so the captain says, hey, give me a second. He gets to dispatch. He says, hey, do you have a estimated time of arrival or an ETA for NIPSCO? And they said, yeah, probably about 30, 45 minutes. And myself and firefighter EMT John look at each other, and we're like, then we look at Captain Hickman, and we're like, this guy doesn't have 30 to 45 minutes. We'll be lucky if he's got 10 minutes. And Captain looked at both of us, and he says, well, what do you guys think? I said, and we both put our heads together and said, well, I think if we get low enough on our stomachs and get all of our gear out there with us, and we basically crawl on the ground nice and easy, I think we can get to this guy and we can get him on a backboard and then basically crawl out with him. And Captain Hickman says, if you guys want to do that, then go ahead. He goes, but please, please, please be careful. And because we were all in agreement. We're like, this guy doesn't have 30 or 45 minutes. He just doesn't. Like, this is something that's got to happen in the next couple minutes. So firefighter John and we wanted to be as low profile as possible. So we basically took almost everything off, like, because your fire coat and all that's pretty bulky. So we had everything off. Helmets were off, everything. We took and got the climbing helmets out of Rescue 1, which is like a little turtle shell. Not that that would do anything, but in firefighting, you got to have a helmet on scene. So we put those little climbing helmets on, so again, it wouldn't be bulky. And we get the backboard out. We put all the gear, like to stabilize the head, the neck, and the body on the backboard, so we could get them attached and get out of there with them. We get everything on this backboard, and I remember I was in the lead, and John said, just, we'll count it out and we'll crawl. We go 1, 2, 3, crawl, 1, 2, 3, crawl. And that's how we did it. And we started out probably a good 35, 40 feet from this guy, and we were on the ground right from the start. Because, again, anytime you have wires close to the ground, you want to be careful because, one, these are damaged wires. They're very unpredictable. There's the chance of arcing. There's the chance that the whole thing could fail and come down. We really didn't know what we were, what could happen. We just knew that we had to get to this guy. So we start crawling on our stomachs, like army type crawling, like you're going through an obstacle course under the barbed wire and whatnot. It took us a good 5 minutes or so to get to him because we're crawling like with a purpose, but we're also trying to stay as low to the ground as possible. And of course, it's fall. There's dew all over the ground. We were soaked with all the dew. So this guy wasn't in the cornfield directly. He was right next to it. So that helped a little bit. So as we start crawling underneath the power lines, well, now you can hear the buzzing and the crackling of the power lines. And I will tell you, it didn't bother me at the time when we were crawling underneath there. But when I still, to this day, think and remember about how that sounded, it just, oh my gosh, it makes me thankful that all of our guardian angels were with us on that early morning. Because, like I said, that was about as dangerous as it can get. So we're underneath the power lines, and you can hear the buzzing, the crackling, and that. And I just knew that we got to work fast. So what I did is when we crawled to the guy, I positioned myself at his head. Again, we're laying flat on our stomachs. I was at his head. John was at this guy's feet. And what we did was we took the backboard and we tilted it at a 45-degree angle, and then we slid it underneath the guy. So we're rolling. Trying to do this on your stomach is no easy task. So we slid it partially underneath him to get a little bit of like a leverage. And then once he was on about a quarter of the board, then we could almost shimmy him over sideways onto the board. Before we actually got him on the board, I ended up putting a C-collar on the guy, stabilize his neck. And then that's when we got the board underneath him. And then once that was there, then I held the guy's neck and his shoulders to try to keep him in line. And that's when John and I worked together and we slid him across onto the backboard. Once he was on the backboard, that's when I grabbed we call the head blocks, which are the big blocks of foam that go right by the head, right by the ears. And I got those on. While I was doing that, John was securing the guy by his feet with all of the buckle straps. So once he had the feet and the waist done, then I reached up and over and I secured him basically with a crisscross pattern across his chest, so it would hold him to the board and he wouldn't slide too much. So once we had him secured that way, then I took some special tape and I went around his head and then around his chin basically and crisscrossed it here and taped it on the other side of the board so it held his head. Once we had him all situated, we got this done in probably less than 2 or 3 minutes. It felt like an eternity under there, but we got it done really fast. Again, training, lots and lots of training, and training in dark environments so you know how to do this stuff. Because the only lights we had were, one of us had a hand light that we set down on the grass pointed towards the victim, but then we also had the lights from the rescue truck, but sometimes it's hard to see, so we're using those lights and then a hand light. So we get this guy secured to the backboard. Now it comes time to get him out of there. So basically, what I did was we basically turned around. I turned around. And so now what I'm doing is I'm in the lead again, and I've got my hand on the board, but I've got my hand back this way. So give me some leverage so I can pull like that. So same thing. I told John, I said, all right, we're going to count it out. 1, 2, 3, and then I'll pull and you push. So again, still hear the wires crackling. So we start our motion outward away from the lines. And so 1, 2, 3, I pulled, he pushed, slid the board. 1, 2, same. It took another 5, 7 minutes to get out of the danger zone. Once we were far enough away, we actually had Captain Hickman watching us with the binoculars. And once he could see that we were far enough away, he gave us the all clear to where we could stand up. Once we were out of the danger area, again, you don't want to be anywhere close to power lines because, again, the arcing, if they come to the ground, they can supercharge the ground. I mean, again, a lot of dangers here. So once we were at the safe distance, both John and I said, all right, we can stand up now. So once again, we just checked overhead just to be sure. You always check overhead. That's one thing they ingrain into you in the fire service. Don't ever take anything for granted. If there's lines down especially, always check overhead. So we checked overhead. We were far enough away to where it was safe to stand up. So we stand up, and then that's when I basically stood up and I grabbed the guy. I grabbed the board, and I had it behind me, and I was holding on by the guy's head. And then John had the guy's feet, and we walked out that way with him. And then we got to the ambulance cot that they had brought out. We put him on the cot and then secured him to the ambulance cot and then put him in the back of Medic 11. And that's when we had, I believe it was a lieutenant back there who was a paramedic, because this was a call that definitely needed a paramedic. John and I were still EMTs. So we get back there, and then the work begins. So there's 3 of us working on this guy. He's got a lot of severe injuries. The biggest thing we had to do was get his airway established. And they do that through various medications through the IV. So we head to the hospital, lights and siren. This was one of those that, because of the severity of it, the firefighter that was driving us in called the hospital in Monticello ahead of time and said, hey, we're bringing you what we call a trauma 1. We're going to request that you launch a helicopter and then have the helicopter meet us at the hospital. That way there's not much of a delay in care, that this guy can get where he needs to be. So they get the helicopter and we're out while we're heading to the hospital, lights and siren. Long story short, we an IV gets established. We get the airway secured. They get the guy intubated. They get a tube in him. They also give him some medications in the back of the ambulance through the IV to reduce the swelling in his head. And then we also made sure we stabilized any visible broken bones that we could see. It's really nice when you really know the people you're working with, because you can do things and not talk to each other. You just automatically know what everybody wants, which when you get to a point like that with the people you work with, it's amazing. So we get him to the hospital there in Monticello. The helicopter's on the way, but in the meantime, we get him into the ER. They take him into the trauma room, get him stabilized even more with the doctors and nurses that are there. And then we, of course, give the handoff. About a half hour later, the helicopter arrives, and then the guy gets transferred to the helicopter, and he was flown to a trauma center in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And then the guy spent, a couple weeks there at least. And he ended up making a full recovery with absolutely no deficits. I tell you, that was a very proud moment when we got the news of that the guy had left the hospital and he had made a full recovery. Before we knew of that news, the next day I was on shift with my regular shift, C shift. Captain Hickman came upstairs to the kitchen at the firehouse, and he had a letter of commendation for myself and firefighter John. That letter was also read at our award ceremony. So the same award ceremony I told you all about Captain Strange when he received his award, myself, and firefighter John both received life-saving awards for the County Road 225 auto incident. Before I get to the how this was written, sadly, the other three that were involved in this did not make it. I'm brand new in the fire service. This was my first ever they called a triple fatal crash. And basically that's where all three people in the car lose their lives. The only surviving person was the guy that was ejected that firefighter John and I went after. And like I said, had we not done that, it would have been 4 fatals without a doubt. Those are tough calls when you go on. We're happy that we saved the life of one young man, but the fact that 3 other lives were claimed because of alcohol being involved really sucks. But we put it all on the line and did save the life of one young man. It was a very proud moment. This letter of commendation, like I said, was read to myself and then Captain Strange, who was up there. He was, like I said, my fire captain. And then all of my shift mates were there. And they all heard Captain Hickman reading this. And, of course, the guys and my captain were very, very proud of what I had done with firefighter John. Shook everybody's hand and a lot of congratulations. Moving forward to the summertime when the awards ceremony came around, the same letter of commendation was read again to everybody that was there at the awards ceremony. While firefighter John and I were standing up there receiving our awards, we were holding our awards while the letter was being read. And this is what it says. So it was written October 7th, 2006, and it says, "This letter is to serve as commendation for your courageous actions at the scene of a vehicle crash on County Road 225 North near Ravinia Loop on 1 October 2006. You responded as the medic crew and arrived to find a utility pole snapped off and being suspended by the power lines and adjacent poles. Your patient had been ejected from a vehicle that had made massive impact with this utility pole. He was critically injured by blunt force trauma and was unresponsive. You both entered into an extremely hazardous area, working directly underneath damaged 69,000-volt power lines. You rapidly stabilized the patient and removed him from the danger area. You continued to administer emergency care in a rapid and professional manner with the assistance of firefighter EMT John. The patient was delivered to White County Memorial Hospital and was later transferred to Parkview Hospital in Fort Wayne by PHI helicopter. At the time of this letter, the patient is in fair condition and is expected to recover. Your courage and dedication to duty has given this young man the best possible chance for survival. You risked your life to save the life of another, which is in the finest tradition of the fire service. Sincerely, Captain Hickman, Monticello Fire Department, with Chief Logan, our medical director, Dr. Epler, and the fire department files." I tell you, I still get choked up reading that sometimes because that's why I got into this line of work, was to help people like that and to put it all out there in somebody's time of need. So the first medal that was presented to firefighter John and I was this one. This is the life-saving fire rescue medal. To earn this medal, you had to basically put it all on the line to save somebody, and the conditions had to be at great risk to your own personal safety. And then also, to earn that medal, not only did you have to put yourself in harm's way where extreme danger existed, but then you also had to have a positive outcome with the call, meaning you had to have saved the life of the individual you went after. The other medal that was associated with this call was this one, and this is the Distinguished Service Medal. That was attached to the life-saving medal. Usually when you get a life-saving medal like that, you almost always follow it up with a Distinguished Service Medal like that because of the great danger that firefighter John and I went into. And like I said, we put it all out there to save this young man. The other part of this now is you got to have the medical side of things, which that's where this one comes in. This is the Life-Saving Medical Award. And that gets awarded to anybody that worked their rear ends off and saved somebody's life through their medical interventions. The work that we did on this guy in the short time frame that we had between the scene and where White County Hospital was, it wasn't a lot of time, but we got a ton of work done in that short period of time. Like I said, the things that we did, without a doubt, helped that young man survive as he got to the ER and then as he was transferred to Fort Wayne. So that's the story, and that's the story behind a couple of the medals that you see in the background sometimes when I do my vlogs in front of this little shelf system that I have over here. As I've said, there's a lot more up there and a lot more stories attached with this, but that is the story of my first life-saving call that I went on with the City of Monticello Fire Department. And that was on October 1st, 2006, and I can't believe that's almost 20 years coming up later this year. That call still lives with me to this day. Like I said, every time I see this letter of commendation, every time I see those medals, I can see myself there all over again. The images and everything that happened that day were just burned into my memory permanently. It was just everything moved so slow, but yet it seemed to move so fast at the same time. And so moving forward throughout my many years with the City of Monticello and then later on through the other agencies I've worked with, this was only one. This was the very first one. I have added many more since then. And as I've always said, I'm happy to do it. I really am. I don't do it for the awards. It's nice to get recognized. You cannot begin to imagine how proud you feel inside that when you save the life of another person, a complete stranger, and then the department awards you the medals for that, and then your friends and family are there to congratulate you. I mean, that is a very, very amazing feeling. But medals and all that aside, the fact that myself and firefighter John were there along with Captain Hickman and everybody else, that all of us working together saved this man's life. That's why we get into this line of work. I've got other stories of my volunteer time, with the other fire department, which we had calls there, that absolutely made a difference. And as I've mentioned, my time with Monticello, I did a lot with them. I really did. Lots of stories to share with that department. And then also, in more recent times as well with other departments that I've worked for. So I hope you all have enjoyed that. And when you see those medals in the background, at least if you see the three of them sitting there together, they're from the call from County Road 225 North near Ravinia Loop in Monticello, where we all worked together, entered into some of the most dangerous conditions imaginable, and ended up coming out safely on the other side and ended up saving a young man's life. So he gets another chance at life. I hope you all enjoyed that story. I enjoyed telling it. Lots more to come. We're going to get back into the parks too. We're got a lot more fun things planned for next week. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening to me talk. Thanks for listening to me tell my stories. As I've said before, there's a lot more to come. Y'all take care of yourselves. Have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Fire Medic Adventure 17 is out. See ya.